Susan Boyle captured the hearts of the world in 2009 when she stepped onto the Britain's Got Talent stage, seemingly shy and unsure of herself, and then stunned everyone with a voice so powerful it seemed impossible. Overnight, she became an international sensation, a symbol of dreams realized and talent recognized. Millions celebrated her as the quiet girl who proved the world wrong, and for a moment, it seemed like her life had finally changed forever. But behind the sparkling headlines and viral videos, the reality of Susan's life was far more complicated and heartbreaking than anyone realized. The fame she gained so quickly came with pressures and expectations that were nearly impossible to manage. What the public saw was her talent and her humility. What they didn't see were the personal struggles, health issues, and emotional battles that quietly shaped her days. Fans noticed periods of absence from the public eye, but few understood the toll the sudden fame and scrutiny had taken on her life. There were moments when the woman who had once captivated the world with a single note felt overwhelmed, exhausted, and invisible in a crowd that expected her to always shine. Now, years after her iconic performance, Susan Boyle is finally opening up about what really happened, the challenges, the heartbreak, and the resilience it took to survive the whirlwind of fame and remain true to herself. Her journey is a powerful reminder that even those who seem to have it all face struggles unseen by the world. And her story is far more emotional, inspiring, and at times, heartbreaking than anyone could imagine. This is the untold story of Susan Boyle, the highs, the lows, and the truth behind the voice that once silenced the world. Susan Boyle's rise to fame is often described as the ultimate fairy tale. Yet the reality behind the headlines was far more complex. Born and raised in Blackburn, Scotland, Susan grew up in a life that many would consider modest, with limited opportunities and constant reminders that the world outside might not welcome someone like her. From an early age, she faced challenges that shaped her into a quiet, introverted young woman. Despite her love for singing and the undeniable talent that would later captivate millions, Susan struggled with self-confidence and social anxiety. Performing in front of others was never easy, and the thought of stepping into a spotlight often felt terrifying. For years, Susan's life remained rooted in routine. She worked odd jobs, cared for her family, and sang privately, dreaming of a life where her voice could be heard but never daring to imagine that millions would one day recognize her. Music was her escape, a way to experience joy and express herself in ways words alone could not. Yet, despite her talent, rejection and fear of judgment kept her from pursuing opportunities that might have launched her career sooner. Those closest to her watched in silence, knowing the voice she carried was extraordinary, but also understanding the personal barriers she faced. Then came 2009, the year that would change everything. Susan decided to audition for Britain's Got Talent, a decision fueled by hope, courage, and the encouragement of family and friends. On stage, she appeared as the quiet, unassuming woman many expected, and for a moment, the audience seemed unsure. But the instant she began singing "I Dreamed a Dream," silence filled the room, followed by a thunderous ovation. Her voice, powerful and emotive beyond her appearance, instantly captured the hearts of millions. Overnight, she became a global sensation, a symbol of triumph over doubt, and an inspiration for anyone who had ever been underestimated. Yet, while the world celebrated her talent, Susan's life was about to change in ways she hadn't anticipated. The fame that seemed magical carried immense pressure. Suddenly, she was expected to perform, travel, and maintain a public image that could never falter. Every performance, every interview, every public appearance became scrutinized. The quiet, private woman who had once felt safe in her small Scottish town was now thrust into a world where millions had opinions about her every move. On top of this, Susan faced personal challenges that complicated her new life. Health concerns, both physical and mental, began to surface. She experienced stress and anxiety amplified by the demands of constant travel, media attention, and high expectations. Even the most mundane interactions became overwhelming, and moments of self-doubt crept in despite her success. What the public saw, her voice, her smile, her victories, was only a fraction of the reality behind her rise. Susan Boyle's story closes, it becomes clear that her journey is not simply one of overnight fame and applause. It is a story of resilience, courage, and quiet strength in the face of pressures and personal battles that remained largely hidden from the world. The path ahead would challenge her in ways even the most devoted fans could never imagine. After her breakthrough on Britain's Got Talent, Susan Boyle's life changed almost overnight. While the applause and media attention were exhilarating, the sudden fame brought pressures she had never experienced before. She was no longer the quiet woman singing in the comfort of her home. She was now expected to perform on stages around the world, appear on television shows, and maintain a public image that constantly invited scrutiny. For someone who had spent decades avoiding the spotlight, the demands were overwhelming. The strain began to affect Susan's health and emotional well-being. Long flights, grueling rehearsals, and the constant need to perform at peak levels started taking their toll. Nights of excitement and anticipation were often followed by exhaustion and anxiety. She worried about her voice, about whether she could meet expectations, and about how the world would react if she faltered. Even simple tasks like attending press events or traveling to international appearances became sources of stress. Susan's natural introversion clashed with the constant visibility fame demanded, leaving her emotionally drained. Additionally, the public attention sometimes brought criticism alongside praise. Online rumors, media speculation, and insensitive commentary began to affect her. Despite her warm personality and genuine intentions, she was often judged for her appearance, her demeanor, and even her social awkwardness. For a woman who had already battled feelings of inadequacy for much of her life, these criticisms were painful reminders that the world could be unforgiving. Every performance, no matter how perfect, seemed to carry the weight of public expectation. Financial pressures also emerged in ways Susan had never anticipated. While she earned significant income from albums, performances, and endorsements, managing sudden wealth brought a new set of challenges. Legal and management complexities, tax obligations, and the logistics of international touring added stress to a life that was already emotionally demanding. She wanted to remain grounded, yet the sudden shift in lifestyle created a constant tension between public perception and private reality. Through it all, Susan's personal life became a source of both support and struggle. She remained deeply connected to her family, but the distance imposed by her global career and public commitments created emotional strain. She often missed private moments, simple daily routines, and the quiet stability she had once known. These losses, though not always visible to the public, weighed heavily on her. She learned that fame could offer opportunities, but also came with isolation that few could understand. Despite the challenges, Susan never stopped performing. Her determination to honor the gift of her voice and the support of fans around the world kept her moving forward. Yet behind each smile and standing ovation was a woman navigating pressures few could comprehend. The emotional, physical, and psychological demands of her new life created a complex balance, and Susan had to find ways to preserve her well-being while maintaining the career that had launched her into the global spotlight. Story unfolds. It becomes evident that Susan Boyle's journey is not merely about fame and fortune. It is about resilience in the face of pressures that could have broken anyone. The road ahead would test her courage, her strength, and her ability to remain true to herself, even as the world watched every step she took. As Susan Boyle's career progressed, the hidden challenges of fame began to weigh on her more heavily. What many fans saw as a glamorous life, performing on television specials, touring internationally, and recording albums, was, behind the scenes, a constant balancing act. Every day brought new demands, new pressures, and new anxieties that she had never experienced in her quieter life. Even simple activities, like meeting fans or attending social events, could trigger immense stress. Susan had spent so many years in a world where she was invisible, that suddenly being under a microscope was overwhelming. One of the most significant struggles she faced was maintaining her voice and health. Singing for long periods, often with little rest between performances, put intense pressure on her vocal cords. Each concert or recording session became an exercise in endurance. She had to be meticulous about her diet, sleep, and practice routines. or risk damaging the instrument that had given her everything. For someone who had once sung privately for comfort and joy, the professional demands transformed her passion into a responsibility that sometimes felt burdensome. Additionally, Susan's emotional well-being became a daily concern. Anxiety and self-doubt, which had been present since her youth, resurfaced under the glare of public scrutiny. She often questioned whether she could meet expectations, whether people still believed in her talent, or whether one misstep could undo everything she had achieved. The very fame that had brought her recognition also magnified her vulnerabilities. Even in moments of success, there was a lingering fear that the world's admiration could vanish overnight. The intense spotlight also affected her personal life. Susan cherished her family and close friends, yet the demands of international travel and public appearances made it difficult to stay grounded. She missed quiet moments, simple routines, and the comforting predictability of her earlier life. Relationships were tested as she tried to navigate a world that demanded constant visibility. While craving personal connection and emotional stability, despite all these pressures, Susan demonstrated remarkable resilience. She learned to set boundaries, protect her voice, and prioritize her health. Slowly, she began carving out a life that allowed her to perform without being consumed by stress. She focused on projects that aligned with her values and limited those that were purely for public exposure. She reconnected with the things that had once brought her peace: her music, her family, and moments of solitude where she could reflect without expectation. This period also revealed her inner strength in dealing with public perception. Rumors, criticism, and unfair comparisons were inevitable, but Susan refused to let negativity define her. She recognized that the world would always have opinions, but her worth was measured not by external judgment, but by her dedication to her craft and her authenticity as a person. Fans who had followed her journey closely began to notice a quieter, more grounded Susan, a woman who had endured immense pressure, yet remained true to herself and her music. By navigating these challenges, Susan Boyle transformed her experience of fame into a source of empowerment. She learned that true resilience doesn't come from avoiding hardship, but from confronting it, adapting, and protecting the essence of what makes someone unique. Her journey, far more complicated than the public ever imagined, is a testament to the strength required to live in the spotlight while preserving one's inner peace. In the final stage of Susan Boyle's journey, the story shifts from struggle to resilience, from pressure to personal triumph. After years of navigating fame, health challenges, and emotional hurdles, Susan began to reclaim her life on her own terms. She realized that true success wasn't measured by album sales, chart positions, or media attention, but by her ability to maintain her well-being, preserve her voice, and remain authentic in a world that constantly sought to define her. One of the most important transformations came in how she approached her music. Susan stopped allowing public expectation to dictate her performances. She chose venues and projects that allowed her to connect with audiences on a deeper, more personal level. Smaller concerts, intimate settings, and carefully curated recordings replaced the relentless demands of mass media and worldwide tours. In these spaces, Susan rediscovered the joy of singing, the reason she had begun her musical journey in the first place. Every note she sang was infused not just with technical skill, but with the emotional depth that comes from a life fully experienced. Her health, both physical and mental, became a priority. Susan sought professional guidance, embraced routines that protected her voice, and allowed herself the rest she had long neglected. This period of self-care was essential for her continued ability to perform, and for her personal peace. She no longer felt guilty for stepping back, understanding that taking care of herself was necessary for sustaining her career and happiness. Relationships also flourished. Susan devoted time to her family and close friends, reconnecting with the stability and support system she had once relied on. She found balance between public life and private life, ensuring that her career did not overshadow the connections that mattered most. These personal anchors provided her with strength, comfort, and a sense of grounding that fame had previously disrupted. Beyond her personal journey, Susan Boyle began to embrace new opportunities to inspire others. She engaged in charitable work, particularly projects that supported aspiring singers, music education, and mental health awareness. Through mentorship and advocacy, she shared not only her talent, but also the lessons learned from navigating extreme pressures and public scrutiny. Her story became more than entertainment, it became a source of hope for those facing challenges in their own lives. Today, Susan Boyle may no longer dominate global headlines as she did in 2009, but her influence remains profound. She is a reminder that success is not always about constant visibility or fame, but about resilience, self-care, and the courage to remain true to oneself. Her voice continues to captivate audiences, not because it is flawless, but because it carries the authenticity of someone who has endured hardship and emerged stronger. Susan's journey underscores a powerful truth: fame and recognition, while extraordinary, are not substitutes for health, emotional well-being, or personal fulfillment. She demonstrates that it is possible to survive overwhelming pressures, protect what matters most, and continue to shine on one's own terms. The woman who once surprised the world with her voice has now revealed a far deeper story, one of endurance, courage, and the quiet triumphs that happen behind the scenes. Susan Boyle's life, filled with challenges, heartbreak, and resilience, is far more inspiring than anyone could have imagined.